Good morning, everybody. My title this morning is More Than a Million Ordinary Folk. It's based on a famous remembrance address by a Vice Admiral from the Second World War, a decorated war veteran who fought in 1939 to 45 and in the post-war period. In his words, he wanted simply to focus on the word remembrance and ask what it is all about. The only thing that is different today is that this is the first Remembrance Assembly, certainly in my time and definitely in yours, since 1945 in fact, when we've actually experienced destruction and suffering on a global scale in very recent times. For one long year now, COVID-19 has wrought havoc and led to casualties which have been frequently measured in thousands per day. And for the first time again in a long time, the lens of remembrance has narrowed from events focused on 75 to 100 years ago to the here and now and today. Jungius, the Vice Admiral, lost a close friend at sea in the Second World War, in fact in the depths of the winter of 1940. They'd been to school together, played sport together, were good friends. And the story of that loss lived with Jungius and came particularly to the fore on remembrance occasions. He says it's a little story of tragic loss, and he never forgets it. He argues, though, that it's no more tragic than countless others from the days of the wars. And he meant countless, not hundreds, not thousands, not tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. He meant well over a million, mostly young men and women, who lost their lives in the wars in the service of Britain and the Commonwealth after 1914, an almost unimaginable loss of life. Regarding COVID, this is the nearest certainly we've come to a global apocalypse on the scale of the world wars. Worldwide, there are reckoned to have been over 51 million cases now. 33 million people have recovered, but many still suffer, and over 1.2 million people have died. In our own country, over 1.2 million cases have been recorded, and daily over 20,000 people admitted to hospital. Very sadly, we're approaching 50,000 deaths altogether since the start of the crisis. But by comparison, these numbers are dwarfed by the scale of the loss of life in 1940 to 80 and 1939 to 45. Remember, though, that we're not talking about the loss of life or casualties today amongst the armed forces purely. If anything, the destruction and suffering today are more random and equally tragic. So what sort of people were these over a million in the world wars? They didn't think of themselves as knights in shining armour. They were nothing much like that at all in their own view. They were on the whole ordinary people, just like you and me. There were mums, dads, uncles, aunts, sons, daughters, sweethearts and wives. They were ordinary folk. For us, in the midst of this pandemic, this sounds remarkably like a description of the health workers and all the NHS and care staff who in many cases have been laying down their lives on the line to keep us and our families safe. We are making sacrifices in schools, as we know only too well, but these pale by comparison with the work and suffering in in our hospitals and care homes. As in wartime, so in the pandemic. As soldiers were frightened in the face of terrible odds, so our NHS heroes showed true courage by continuing doing their duty in spite of the fear they often feel. Soldiers in the wars didn't enjoy what they were doing, but they felt it had to be done. They had a sense of duty, if you like, and I think we can be pretty certain that this captures the motivation and the heroism of NHS and care home staff. So just to finish, perhaps we should be asking, where does God stand on this remembrance business? This is a religious assembly after all. Well, one answer could be, we don't really know. Another could be that Jesus left us a clue when we think of those words of his, greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends, which is in essence what those more than 1 million ordinary folk were doing in the world wars, and the same ordinary folk continue to do in this strange and dangerous year of the pandemic. This is really a war without the fighting. So may God bless the fallen of every generation. Going on to move on to the reason of the roll of honour.
Praise God, and memory of 1940 1980. L. J. Anderson. G. Holt. A. L. Anderson. H. L. Easton. N. Regard. C. J. Linfield. E. E. Wallow. E. Bus. T. W. Bus. R. E. Caswell. B. E. Clark. S. A. Clark. A. T. Connor. S. D. Connor. B. J. Connor. Baron H. J. Dawson. R. M. Dunn. J. B. D. C. Everhardy. W. H. H. Gandhi. A. Graves. W. Greenstead. H. D. R. Kelly. DSO. W. H. Horsley. D. T. H. Hudson. C. L. Dobson. A. S. Jones. B. E. Jones. H. B. Kennedy. J. King. S. J. Kinnock. D. Lambert. C. S. Martin. T. A. Miller. J. R. Moore. J. H. Marr. E. R. Nelson. E. W. Norton. H. Owen. J. H. R. W. W. R. W. A. E. Russell. R. Ray. O. Whitewood. D. P. Rebecca. L. Robot.